Day. WINS Shamrock DAY. How y'all doing today? I hope that everyone's doing fine and divine. If you've not been here before, then my name is Stacey Renee. I'm a mindset coach, a life coach, a consultant, a content creator. I'm not an influencer though. Y'all have to influence yourselves. But I hope that what I say today or anytime you look at these videos will help influence you and be able to help you feel comfortable in your own skin from within. Because when I set my intention in the morning, that's where we begin, is that I want you all to feel like you're a part of something. So, welcome. You're welcome to be here. Things we don't talk about here are politics, religion, my age, and my dating status. But today, what we're going to talk about is who drew your map. On Monday, we talked about your internal map. And a lot of us don't realize that our thoughts and our feelings are also navigating through us internally, through that nervous system. And our nervous system either reacts or responds. And so when our nervous system is reacting and responding, is it a learned behavior to, something that has been learned a long time ago? So that's what we're pretty much going to look at today, is who drew your map. We talked about your internal map and your belief system on Monday. So today we're talking about who drew your map. And hear me out, because a lot of times we want to think that we're making our choices and they come from our belief systems, but our belief systems were imprinted, ingrained, and embedded within us in those years 1 to 12. And so a lot of times we may have fears that aren't even our fears to carry. And they may be our parents' fears, which were maybe brought from them, from their parents, and so on and so forth. And they didn't have the information, the data highway we have today. So we're going to look at who drew your map. Questions like, where did this belief originate? Was it taught, caught, experienced, or just assumed? Because a lot of us, when there was a lack of communication in our lives, that we have learned to make some stuff up and use our imagination. So we may be assuming. So we talked about that a few weeks ago, what we're assuming. So today we're going to discuss family beliefs, religious beliefs, cultural beliefs, trauma beliefs, protective beliefs, and survival beliefs. Our belief system. Hey, big guy. It is unconscious. It is. So it's making that unconscious conscious. Thank you, big guy. It's good to see you. So yeah, making the unconscious conscious, because sometimes we're just not aware. Some things are just small that get passed down. For me, my mom was afraid to drive. Hey, geez, Jaded Wasted, how are you this morning? Good day. Good to see you. Oh, thank you for those hearts. Is that Kim? Kim can't be, vocal in the house, but yes. So thank y'all for being here this morning. That means a lot to me, because I know there's other places you could be, but for you to be here on this Wednesday with me, that makes me happy. So, in looking at these family beliefs, there's a lot of times we don't even realize this imprint, how deeply this imprint goes. And so when I got my driver's license when I was a teenager, one of the things my mother had not liked she did not like to drive downtown. And, that's understandable, because there's one-way streets downtown and a lot of people get nervous about driving downtown. However, I'm different. I'm not afraid of many things. I'm not afraid of a lot. There are things I'm afraid of. I have some good, healthy fears, because there's healthy and unhealthy fears. Some of those are embedded in our belief system. So that's what we're going to look at today. So I do drive in downtown. I drive in Dallas. I drive in Houston, Texas. It doesn't bother me driving, but it did my mother. So there for a while, I thought that was scary, because that was something that I had always seen growing up and heard growing up. So I thought that it was scary, but once I did it, it wasn't scary. And many of us hold ourselves back because we hear these things and we think that that's scary, but that might not be our truth. Sometimes my mother got angry. Are one-way towns more safe? I don't know, big guy, because we certainly got one-way streets, boy. People down here in Mexico, the driving is cray-cray. Driving is cray-cray. Not as bad as India, but the driving's crazy. I don't have tissues because Grinch steals my tissues. Takes them off my desk and puts them right in his cage. But, down here, They say that the stop signs are a suggestion. You do well if you find some lines on the road. So people certainly aren't taking up ownership with the lines on the road. But we do have some one-way streets. And the good deal is I walk a lot. So when I'm crossing the street, I only have to look one way. Now, if you're walking a pedestrian, one-way streets are much safer because you don't have to look both ways and somebody come out of nowhere, pretty much but yeah, so it's just about, what you think. I can say that Houston, Texas is a scary town to drive in. They are speeding, they are racing. There's usually a wreck every evening, on the interstate. And there's like 5-lane, 6-lane interstate, So it can be a lot, but it's not impossible. It's just staying in your lane. A lot of people have issues with driving, and a lot of it is belief systems. A lot of issues, not just my mom or anybody. I mean, I work with people who have they think that somebody on the road is out to get them. Good morning, Alfonso. So they think somebody's on the road out to get them, and they don't even know them. I've had people say, "Do you see that?" And I said, "I see a person in a car." Because in reality, when we think about it, that's all that is a person in the car. There's no way that we could possibly be in their mind. And if we are trying to be in their mind, guess who's in our mind? Nobody. So sometimes, this is why we have to get aligned with our belief system. John London, good day to you. How are you doing? It's good to see you here this morning. So yeah, we're diving deeper into the belief systems. So on Monday, we talked about, what was it? Now I've gotten deep into this one. I forgot about Monday. But Monday, we talked about the belief systems, the internal belief systems. We get so excited when we see each other enter the room, don't we? That sometimes we just lose our train of thought. So starting to feel a bit better from the sinus infection. I'm so glad you're feeling better. That was an up and down kind of thing, right? So I hope that you're better. Yes. So talking about where these beliefs come from. I know for me, sometimes I used to even get mad. There was a lot of anger that flew around in our house when I was a child. My mom's anger, my dad's anger. Go to my grandparents' house, then there's my grandparents' anger. And so sometimes my anger even was not even my own anger to have. There's a deal called transference of anger, and y'all have heard me talk about the transference of anger. So sometimes even when we're angry, is it our angry? Do we really believe that this person did us wrong? And the cool thing is when we are able to change a belief system about when we feel pain from thinking somebody did us wrong. I'm not saying people won't do you wrong, because they really will do you wrong. So it's not saying and dismissing ourselves any longer, because a lot of times we were hurt and we did dismiss it, or it was dismissed because that was just safer, right? And sometimes we even discarded our own feelings. So when we get into our own belief systems and get to see if this is really my feelings being hurt, anxiety from belief system, that's a good thing to bring up, big guy, because yes, there is anxiety from a belief system. Because a lot of people didn't feel like anything they ever did was good enough, right? So talking about where does this anxiety from a belief system come from is that sometimes we are taught to perform, that we have to do something to earn love, to deserve, rewards and things like this. So we are overperforming. So we're anticipating and strategizing how we're going to get something. And then our belief system may have us perceiving that everybody else is trying to get something. And that's not saying that either or is bad. It's just saying that our belief systems come together to help us realize things about ourselves. John London, sometimes we can unconsciously play out other people's story and not write our own. I know I've been guilty. I've done that because I wanted for somebody else what I wanted for myself, but I didn't consider myself. And it's good to want for somebody else for what we want for ourselves, but there's also this non-attachment to that. If we're trying to perform or prove something to somebody, we're attached to the outcome. But when we want that for somebody else genuinely, we can stay in our business and not put ourselves out, not forget ourselves, not negate ourselves, not come down on ourselves, because that their goodness and what they receive is going to be a manner of which I'm able to be uplifted. Because if we already uplift ourselves and if somebody else does well because we encouraged it or something else, that has nothing to do with us. We just encouraged it. We were a vehicle and we just expressed what we had already. So that's what that is. But a lot of times we weren't brought up with that, is that our parents had a limited belief system because they didn't have all the resources that we have now today. You know, the psychology, the neuroscience that's available at all of our fingertips today to understand that what goes on in your brain also transmits into your body. So it's really important to understand what our belief systems are. So in talking about that, and who drew your map, is looking at who drew the internal map. It's probably a person who has highly influenced our lives. So that person doesn't turn bad just because we realize that my beliefs aren't their beliefs. You see, is that because I took on some of my mother's beliefs as a child, and then when I get to be an adult, I get to be autonomous and claim my own beliefs. My daughter gets to be autonomous and claim her own beliefs, and our beliefs don't match either because of the evolution of life. So when we're kids and we tell our parents, well, times were different when you were growing up, there's some truth to that. That doesn't mean that our parents didn't have wisdom, but it does mean that there really was. And it doesn't mean that we're right and they're wrong, and it doesn't mean that they're right and we're wrong. It means somewhere in between there's harmony. Because these are both two different experiences. Growing up in a home where there's 3 kids, like in mine, all of us had a different experience growing up. My brothers didn't have the same experience I had, so that creates our internal beliefs as well. We all have this common belief. My brothers and I get along. I'm very fortunate. I was talking to one of my friends this morning about that, is that I get along well with my brothers. I don't have this family separation that so many people have had to do and sometimes they have to. They have to become, estranged, because if you're dealing with people who don't respect your boundaries, well, by all means, you're going to have to become estranged. I don't promote that necessarily, but if you've tried having boundaries and somebody won't pay attention to your boundaries, and if they verbally abuse you and attack you, I believe that sometimes that's the only way, because as my coach told me, it's not spiritual to be abused. And I passed that down, because people can verbally abuse you. They may not leave a mark on your body, but it may come out in your body, as it did with me. My health was affected by verbal abuse because it releases some toxicity in the thoughts. Whether I believe what was said to me or not, there's some toxicities in the defenses that want to come back to that. And so it still will drain down your glands, into your body, your ganglia chains, and you'll have a health issue, chances are. You might not, but you could. Again, that's according to your belief system. So I have my notes here. Thanks, John London. So I have my notes here so that I can stay on topic. I always appreciate your input, though, so that's why I have notes, is so I can go back to the topic if I go too far off, because I love talking about this stuff, and I love getting to meet with you all to talk about this stuff. You think gut health is important. I know gut health is important, big guy. I do. It's all communicating. You have a gut brain along that communicates with this brain. A lot of it communicates through this amygdala that's in your body. But you also have the ganglia chains, where the stuff in the back of your mind, and how your perceptions feed the back of your mind. It releases chemicals, hormones and things. And some of those hormones and chemicals can be toxic if it's not balanced. So, I go into the woo-woo world of balance and chakras have to do with the body. And, I didn't know about all of this and how it affected the body until chakra work was done on me. And I learned that my central nervous system was running in overdrive because I was always in protective mode. Always. And so I was waiting for that other shoe to fall. These things that we come up with our head. And when we looked at that, waiting for the other shoe to fall isn't a bad thing. It's the expectation attached to waiting to the other shoe to fall, right? So we've built up a story around that, and that's the story that's been heard for years. And so this is how our belief systems are formed, and that's how deeply entrenched and ingrained that they are. But yes, it does affect your gut health. When people say, when they see something, perceive something, they'll say, oh, I'm sick at my stomach. That's a real deal. That's a real deal. is that we release chemicals, in our body when we see things that don't align with us, when we see things that make us sad, when we see things, our tears, it cleanses us. They're not bad, but a lot of people have been taught the tears are bad when actually your tears are letting out some of these belief systems that no longer serve you. The problem is we want to judge our tears even because we've learned these things. So it's really important to know our body because your body was intrinsically and divinely designed. And we don't know that. We just think of our bodies as something on a piece of paper in science or biology, and that's not true. That's not true. A lot of people are willing to accept these things, because in certain faith beliefs, people say, your body is your temple. Your body is your vessel. But do we treat them that way? Whatever your belief system is, you don't have to believe that belief system. But the real deal is that most of us, when we get old, this is why I'm so conscious about creating adventures, because a lot of people, when they get old and they realize that what they didn't do, if you didn't live your life with your desires, if you didn't do this, then when you get old and you look back, you're going to wish that you did. And you're going to be stagnate in your body because you had your body perform for certain things that just limited. I hope that I'm trying to explain this a bit, but it'll be limited, and then we'll have limited experiences. Do I believe in reincarnation? I do, big guy. How are all these people, and they're, my religion growing up made me think that all of us are going to be back in our perfect bodies in heaven. And I thought, how are we all going to fit up there in heaven in these bodies like this? And why do I need to walk on streets of gold? I don't care. I walk on streets now and they ain't gold, and I'm not desiring to have gold streets. So it's about being aligned, and I do believe in reincarnation. But I think that the afterlife for people is what they wish it to be or what they perceive it to be. I talk about a lot of times about the What Dreams May Come movie, because that deals directly with what we think the afterlife is going to be like when we die. That's part of our soul consciousness, and that's probably what it's going to be like, because the rapture and all of that is about afterlife as well. So reincarnation, afterlife, I'm open. I like, because really none of us know. When I lost my son, somebody gave me this, thank you, Faith. So when I lost my son, somebody gave me a poem about dragonflies. And in this poem, what it says is that all these grub worms were at the bottom of the pond, and all these grub worms would be like, a friend would go up and not come back. So they didn't know what happened when you go up, So one of the slugs said to the rest of them, and they're like, when I go up, I'm going to tell y'all what happens when you come back. But the real deal is that it went up and it couldn't come back. But a dragonfly is beautiful and magnificent. So I do believe there's beauty and magnificence after we die. And I don't think any of us know how that's going to turn out until, there's some people who say they had near-death experiences, and I believe that there is the light. I believe in some of these things, but I think that we all have our individual relationships with our source. And so that's going to determine what happens afterwards. That's what all the literature says. So it's what our belief system is. So it goes deep. It's not just a belief system about, there's opinions too. Opinions aren't worth anything, because when people die, they're not going to be talking about your opinions. They're not. So your belief is what gives you your intention and motivation in this life. What kind of legacy are you going to leave behind? Because even if you're not famous or popular, I'd prefer people to talk about me nice before I die, and everything, so I can hear it, than after I die. And that doesn't mean I'm a people pleaser, because I am not. I had a client last night, and we were talking about assholes, and I can be an asshole too. We all have that capacity. Yeah, too many souls. We need to live like 1,000 times. I know, right? Because the souls, I think, can all fit. The souls are all everywhere, I believe. That's my belief. But all this stuff that I grew up believing, I always had questions. I was like, but, and they'd say, Stacy, just be quiet. You just have to have faith. So this is what we're talking about today when we talk about who drew your map. Was it religious beliefs? Because religious beliefs can tell us to shut up and sit down and just, to go with the flow. Some of our family systems told us to shut up and sit down. So were we really able to create an authentic belief system? Hey, Shalajuran. So were we really able to create a belief system of our own, our autonomous belief system? So as we get to, be older, we create that or not. We still keep living for everyone else. Hey, Mr. Simon Beard. And if we keep living for everybody else, we're not going to be satisfied within ourselves. You see, because we're looking to others to be satisfied with us. And that's not to say that we're selfish and self-centered. In fact, it's the opposite, because then we are doing what we're doing because we want to do it, and not from that sense of obligation. So if we believe that I have to earn, or if we believe that I have to perform to get appreciation and to get love and I have to deserve it. You were born worthy. You already earned it when you were born. You already deserved it. And talking to the person I was talking to this morning, it's like we go back to remembering who we were, that childlike state, this curiosity that I keep talking about, to explore ourselves and our soul, because it is all divinely connected and wholly, like WHOLLY, directed, because we are whole. When we're looking for stuff outside of ourselves to make us feel complete, that's why it can't fill us up, because it's not outside of ourselves. It's in here. So, how many of y'all have had the dialogue, though? I know growing up I heard it, and I know that I had it for a while until I realized that I needed to be in my own mind. But how many of y'all grew up with this dialogue with people, maybe your parents, maybe somebody else you heard saying, they think, and we don't know what they think. And half the time we think they're thinking about us, and they're not even thinking about us. And if they are, then they're not even in their own mind. So, it's just looking at our belief systems. So when we're trying to think about what somebody else is thinking and afraid to ask, that is one clue that our belief system is not our own. Because a lot of times we say they think, and we don't ask. So what's that? That's an assumption. That's assuming. We talked last week about good assumptions and bad assumptions, because there's good to everything and there's bad to everything, except some things. And that's not what we're talking about this morning. But assumptions. We're talking about things like this. Is that bird? That bird's down there biting my feet. I felt something on my foot, and I'm like, what? There he goes. So anyway, that's one clue. It's our belief system and not a map, and we're being in someone else's mind. So this won't get us to where we want to go or grow when we're too busy focusing on what someone else thinks. So it's really a practice to learn to get in our own mind, because even that in itself might have been a learned behavior. Mr. Simon Vitter, did I say hello? Because I want to say hello if I didn't, and I can't remember if I did or not. So anyway, how many of you feel that you've filled other people's agendas and were left wanting? I know I did. I filled other people's agendas because I believed in my codependency, that, in being charitable, I did believe in all of these things. And those things are good, but not without consideration of ourselves. Do I have it? Do I have it mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially? If I don't have one of those, I just don't have it. Hello, ID. So if we don't have it, then it's not a rejection just to say, I don't have it today. I'm sorry. Thank you, though, for inviting me or asking me, and saying it just like that. That's not with shame, right? But some of us were taught to be shamed. I had a talk with a young mom here a while back about how when we were kids, we were taught, we had a toy and somebody else wanted to play with it, we had to share. And I talk about, as an adult, when I get something new, if I get a new car, which I don't, but if I did, if somebody asked me to drive it when I first got it, I'd be like, no. And I might not ever let them drive it. But see, so that's when we have to reclaim what's ours. Is sometimes we're taught to believe certain things. I've shared about how my belief system was that I was spoiled and self-centered. And so I was not spoiled and self-centered any more than anybody else is at 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. Teenagers are just spoiled and self-centered because we got these adult bodies. We have hormones. We have all kinds of things. Now, I'm not saying that some aren't really outstanding, but I know I was not outstanding. I was not any different. I was not an exception to the rule like I wanted to think that I was. Maybe I wanted to be, but I was a teenager, and teenagers still don't know everything. And so I thought I did, though. My belief system was that I did. And part of that was because I had, a mom that confided in me too much. So I really thought I was smarter than your average kid, but I was not So how many of you feel that you filled other people's agendas but were left feeling underappreciated, maybe discarded even? I know I did. I would help people build up, and everything, and then they would get to a certain level, and I would still be where I was at. In all honesty, I would still be where I was at the time that we started this relationship, or we started whatever it was. I would still be where I was at. And even though I helped them grow, I still stayed here for their comfort. So I felt abandoned. I felt rejected. I felt like I did all this work for them and they left me. And I did many times in my codependency. Yeah, she did level with me a lot. She didn't know any better. She was trying to do something different. See, that was from her pain because her mom and her did not have a relationship. So she got married when she was 16, had me when she was 18. She didn't know how to have a healthy mom-daughter relationship, and that to her was a healthy mom-daughter. And to me, it was for a long time until I had my own. And it's like, no, I didn't tell my daughter everything about mine and her dad's problems. And she resented it too. So it's one of these cases, when we're parents, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, But I do believe that as parents, what we've learned now is so that our kids don't take our own grief and pain on is to talk to someone our age or a professional with our grief and pain, and not to try to, enlist the kids in that. But they didn't know then, they did not. So in the first 12 years, we develop belief systems. And as I've said before, for some reason, we think that just because we are in these grown bodies, like I said, the teenage bodies, that we have outgrown our beliefs. And even, the adult bodies, like we think, okay, I'm not going to be like my parents. So we decide I'm not going to do what they did. And then we have our own kids like I did. And then we're still then my childhood wounds came out and it's like, oh, I don't want them to experience what I experienced. Do you think they appreciate it? I think that it was better that they didn't experience a lot of things that I experienced. But to think that they appreciate it is another story, because that was not their story and that was not their pain. So they are not going to appreciate it. So when parents throw up to their kids, I gave you this, I gave you that, and da-da-da. I think that's not nice. That's not nice. And that may have happened to you, or we may have done it ourselves. I did not do that particular part, because I shared with some people the other week that my dad had us thinking that love was sacrifice. Like my dad would say things like, I stand on these feet for like 10 to 12 hours a day to provide a home for you all, and blah, 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 blah. And what do we say as teenagers or kids? We say, well, I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask for this. So both of it's really thrown off. But when people say that kind of thing, sometimes we may take that on as unearned guilt, and we may feel like that if somebody's nice to us, then we owe them something. That's how we build obligation. I know for me, these days in maturity, I want people to want to hang out with me because they want to. I want them to do things with me because they want to, not a sense of obligation. So I'm thankful that I got to heal from my own codependency. I think all of us want that, right? So that's where our autonomy comes in as adults, is that healing process, because our parents didn't have the resources to heal like we did. I know when I was a kid, my mom had a friend that needed to go to therapy. She ran away from her husband and she needed to go to therapy. My grandmother used to have nervous breakdowns so she could go to the hospital and get some rest. So back then they used to call you crazy and things like this, and you really had to worry about people locking you up, where nowadays, maybe it's even considered a luxury to be able to talk to somebody outside of yourself to get help, to get coaching, to get counseling. So like I said, things evolve and they change. We're a lot more open about things, and it's good and it's bad, right? Because a lot of people don't like a lot of the things they hear people being open about. So some people have grown up with narcissistic, codependent abuse, neglect, and even divorce of parents, and it leaves its own imprint. With my kids, I didn't want them to have an imprint of divorce, but the real deal was that we could use some psych wards now. I know, especially now, and you know what? The coaching and counseling business is slow because those who do have money are shopping their way. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them are shopping their way into their happiness, because there's a lot of people who need coaching and need to invest in themselves, but they're not because they, in some societies, they've been taught to, if you buy this, that will make you happy, or if you do this, that's going to make you happy. And even some of it, it's just so, and then there's some that can't afford it. And that's why I get on here, because my heroes are those that didn't, a lot of people who didn't have a good chance, that they didn't have a good chance, and that they have expanded and grown. And those are the people that I look up to. And I know I've expanded and grown, and I feel a responsibility to share that with people, because you can. I'm not where I want to be, like, financially yet, but physically and emotionally and, mentally, I'm where I want to be, and I want to help others be there too, because it's a crazy time, isn't it, big guy? So to help people have that sense of peace, even if it's just for an hour on here or an hour and a half, to know that they're not alone, and that other people have felt this way, because those are the people that motivate me, because it does start, our belief systems feed into our intentions and motivations. And sometimes when we are just running on that central nervous system, we don't know what our intentions and motivation is. It's just a survival skill. So if people have grown up in those kind of atmospheres like narcissism, they're fragmented. That's going to affect your central nervous system. It doesn't mean that they are broken or anything like that. It means that it fragmented their central nervous system. They're not broken. So let me get that straight. What that does is, when you live with somebody who has narcissistic tendencies, that person will tell you that to do something, and they tell you they said not to do that thing, so you do that thing, and then they say, why'd you do that? And then it's like, it's crazy making. So your central nervous system doesn't know what to do. You don't know what to do. Your central nervous system is guiding your body, your motivation, your feel like it. And so when you don't know what to do, and you've grown up with several years of not knowing what to do, then you're just trying to please people a lot of times, just so that you don't get chewed out and your central nervous system feel uneasy and uncomfortable, because those things do make you sick, not just sick at your stomach. It'll be like, oh, this makes me sick. But then what do? We stop, or this gets on my nerves. And then we reach for something outside of ourselves to fix those things. A lot of times, I'm so nervous I need a cigarette. I'm so nervous I better eat something because my stomach, and these kind of things. But we don't pay attention to why am I nervous, and what the belief system is under these nerves. And these nerves are linked to these neural pathways that run through your body, down your ganglia chains, your autonomic and cerebrospinal chains. And those are real things in your body. Those are real things in your body. Now, when I talk about soul and ego, are those able to be found in your body? It's toxic to have that feeling. Yes, it is toxic, and it will release chemicals. That's the thing, that's what we know. Is when I talk about the soul and the ego gives you your drive. The ego's not all bad. A lot of people think, ooh, the ego. I know, I did too. But the ego gives you your drive. It gives you your will to live, And so the ego is not all bad, but when it's in overdrive, because the ego, where it sits in your body, and they don't, like I say, scientifically, they don't know where your ego sits in your body, just like we don't know where your soul sits in your body scientifically. But scientifically, we do know about these chemicals, hormones that get released in your body. Scientifically, we do know that there's ganglia chains in your body. And we do know that when we release according to what our belief system is and what our feelings are, when we release those chemicals in our body, they can become toxic. Sometimes the way somebody acts, if you're dealing with people who are narcissistic or you're afraid on the outside, it becomes toxicity and fear on the inside that's in your, the chemicals in your body that are being released, and everything else. And that's where, so it affects your body as well. Thank you, big guy, you got some great questions. I appreciate that. So yes, it does affect. And even the non-release of those good chemicals is when we're just in fight, flight, or freeze. What do you think is happening to the good chemicals that are in our body? You know, serotonin and these kind of things. Are we stopping that because we're having an overflush of this other? You know, and are we releasing the bodies? Your cerebrospinal fluid is supposed to go up and down these ganglia chains, what they may call your kundalini, or in other words, or what they may call this, you know, other things. So that's supposed to go up and down your body to keep you in the flow of life. So yeah. So it's my belief that the ego gives us our drive, talking about the ego. It gives you your drive. What do you want? And when we can get focused on what we want instead of trying to strategize not having what we don't want. See, that's where a lot of us learn to protect ourselves and to build those survival skills. But when we are able to heal, doesn't sleep help that fluid in the spine? It definitely does. That's why we do the breathing exercises. So at the end of these lives too, is because even those breathing exercises, it helps us anytime we can get back in our bodies, right? And so in those breathing exercises, we get back in our bodies and let our mind have a rest for a minute. You know, that, like I said, the Reiki helped me a great deal with my central nervous system because my body was always anxious. And I didn't even know my body was anxious, like you were talking about earlier. Is then when I started getting the Reiki performed on me, just laying down and having energy work done on me, I started noticing, you know, like I didn't notice immediately what happened there. I was relaxed. But then after 2 weeks, what I did notice is that some of the things that bothered me before didn't bother me as intensely. So it started slowly disappearing, the you know, the meanings that I was giving to things when I learned to relax more. So the sleep does help. Relaxing does help. It helps our body finally feel safe. Because a lot of times the reason we're anxious is because we don't feel safe, right? Whatever our belief system created, whatever our experience was that created that belief system of non-safety. So that's why the breathing helps with the safety. That's why, you know, the sleep helps with us feeling safe. It's important when we go to sleep not to have, you know, a lot of violence playing on the TV if we can keep from it when we go to sleep. If you can have nothing playing, that's the best. But, you know, a lot of people do put on some hertz music, you know, megahertz music and all of this kind of stuff. So our ego gives us our drive, and then our soul gives us our direction. When you get in contact and touch with your soul, your own autonomy, your own authenticity, your own originality about what makes me upset and what was my parents, you know, am I upset about this because my mom or my dad was upset about this? Or my beliefs about respect because this is what my mom or my dad believed about respect. A lot of people believe respect needs to be earned. I think we can all respect each other, but if somebody doesn't respect me, it's not about me. That's what I believe. So I'm not dependent on somebody else to respect me. I don't think that they have to earn it from me, or that I have to earn it from them. I think that if we're just kind human beings and treat each other with respect, there's going to be those that will respect us and those that will not respect us. And we don't need to demand respect. A lot of people were taught to demand respect. And that's probably not the way to get respect. I know for me, being the rebel that I am, when somebody demands something, I question it a great deal because I think, why are they demanding that? I've had people, I really had an epiphany. I was walking in Louisiana. I guess some of y'all may have heard this story before, but I was walking in Louisiana one time during COVID, and I asked this lady something, and she was like this far from me, and she walked right by me, didn't even look my way, and I thought, oh, a lot of people would probably think that's disrespect, and is that disrespect? And I had to analyze that. Is that disrespect? Because she didn't speak to me or acknowledge me. I know people that they would say that that was disrespectful, but for me, I was like, that lady didn't know me. She didn't owe me. At the same time, she didn't owe me any acknowledgement. She didn't have to. You know, so I didn't need to get my nervous system or get myself all upset because she didn't acknowledge me. See, so that's again about the belief system. Does anybody have to earn my respect? No. You don't have to earn my respect. People just get my respect. There's people who share things that they just get my respect. They're not trying to earn my respect. So I hope that this is helpful for y'all this morning about learning your own respect and about how you don't have to earn it. That's your God-given right. But if somebody doesn't respect you, it has nothing to do with you. It may have something to do with an old picture of you. I had one person tell me that they didn't like blonde-haired women, and they had me be their sponsor because they needed to heal from that thing because a blonde-haired woman was mean to them. Somebody who looked like me, was mean to them. And I get it, and I wasn't offended by that at all. So it's about changing our belief systems. If our belief systems hurt us, guess what? Nobody else out there, we can't demand anybody else to fix our belief system. That's something we have to fix ourselves. I had to fix myself. So, like I said, your ego and your soul, no one knows where they are in your body, but I like to say that they're at your central nervous system, at your, solar plexus is what they call them. And that's why I say your soul's there too, with it being your solar plexus. And that chakra, if you look at chakras, that's a golden chakra, and so it's right underneath your heart. It's right above your relationships. And how many of us struggle with the relationships? Because that's why I get on here and do what I do, because I like unity and community. Because we were destined to work as a community, but we don't always all have to be alike, like uniform. We don't always have to have the same belief systems, and that doesn't mean that somebody's bad because they have a different belief system, and it doesn't mean that I have to have their belief system imposed upon my belief system. It means that I can respect their belief system and leave them alone. So if we can't help people, we don't need to hurt them, because it's not about me. That's one of the things I had to learn in codependency. So when we know what we want, we can go towards that. Just little steps, not the instant gratification, remember. And then we get the direction, our soul's direction. Because sometimes we have to re-navigate. A lot of people are afraid of mistakes, but sometimes we just have to re-navigate. How do you know what to do to approach your belief system? Well, anytime we're upset, pain is the greatest motivator, is usually how we can really recognize our belief system. Is pain is the greatest motivator, unfortunately. Now, it's nice if we could just sit, but usually when we're content, we're just content and we aren't trying to check out our belief system. Sometimes people aren't comfortable being content, and that might be a problem with the belief system. Some people, if they were taught they had to perform, if they were relaxing and somebody said, "What are you doing?" because they were just relaxing. So if there were those demands, being able to look at those demands when we're content is, why do I think that I can't rest when we know that we've done everything that we could do for the day? And I have seen and worked with people who've had that. And it's like, why do you think you need to get up? Well, because my dad said, "What are you doing?" or this or that. And they were nervous. Certainly if you grew up in, like what I said, one of those narcissistic homes, is that what people create in that is that you have to depend on somebody to always give you direction, or you're always trying to get approved of. And so being able to understand where our belief came from is how we can really approach it. So a lot of times, like I said, it's when we're in pain, because our parents may have said, "Well, people like this always get the jobs and you don't," and so if we don't get a job, we may automatically go to, in our mind, about, "Oh yeah, people like that always get the job and I don't," but I had to check that with myself too. Hey, Stuart. Why are so many people timid and afraid? Well, a lot of us have different life experiences. I love the Buc-ee's, your Buc-ee's picture there, but they just are. And really, were they born that way? Because we were all born whole, worthy, and everything else. It's just that sometimes these belief systems caused us to play small. They interrupted our nervous system. Because as kids, we breathed in wholly. When you look at the book, Body Keeps the Score, and the breathing that we do at the end of these lives is that when you breathe into your tummy, you breathe in like, y'all ever seen those pictures of us when we're little kids and we got our bellies just out there because we're just breathing, we're just being ourselves. And then we learn to start playing small for whatever reason, pain usually. Yes, so I can make the determination on my or belief. Yes. Yeah, a lot of them, like I said, are influenced by our parents. They say these things like, how would you ever know what waiting for the other shoe to fall to mean if your parent hadn't said that? So many people I've worked with that know that one, or hoping for the best and expecting the worst. How would they know that saying and develop that expectation without developing that as a belief system, right? I had it too. I had to go. See, when we get curious, though, we start saying, oh, where did hoping for the other shoe to fall come from? Well, it came from the 1920s when they started building apartments in New York. And what happened was when a neighbor came home from work and they took a shoe off, then they heard one shoe fall in the apartment below. And then when they took the other shoe off, they heard the other shoe fall. So when we look at our expectations and reality, okay, going home from work and taking your shoes off is not a bad thing. And if our biggest problem all day is hearing a shoe fall on the ceiling, is that a bad thing? I think not. So you see how a belief system can be delicately influenced like that? How many of y'all have said waiting for the other shoe to fall or hoping for the best and expecting the worst? Hoping for the best and expecting the worst doesn't make sense now, does it? Because you're not in alignment. Sometimes, though, that drive, hoping, and a lot of people give up on hope because they were driven to hope and then they were disappointed. And like I said, we'll make mistakes. We'll have to re-navigate sometimes, but it doesn't mean to give up. It doesn't mean that you're a failure, but did your belief system tell you that you're a failure just because you have to re-navigate? See, I had to learn to change my belief system, and I encourage you to too, but you do what you want to do. I had to change my belief system that, oh, a mistake is just an opportunity to re-navigate. All of our great inventors made plenty of mistakes before the light bulb was created, before this was created. They all made mistakes. Making mistakes is part of our human nature. But some of us have forgotten what our human nature is. Stuart, we can always count on Murphy's Law. It happens. Well, I don't know. I think that we all have our own experiences and that we don't need to live, we can live whatever law we want, if we want to. There are laws, but I just choose to stay in my hula hoop, in my body. And I'm not trying to anticipate these laws because they are right and they're not right. It depends on what it is, ourselves. And what is right for me may not be right for somebody else, So, the ego gives you your drive. Getting aligned with your ego. What do I want? Do we want an adventure? Do we want a job opportunity? It may not come exactly how we think, and that's the art of non-attachment. That's where the harmony is in between, to not give up. And then our direction. Sometimes we have to re-navigate our direction. So we're talking about the internal maps right now. And first off, learning how to discern to begin with and not judge ourselves based on what does or does not happen. Learning where our beliefs came from. Big guy, I hope that was answering your question and that it gave you something to ponder, because a lot of people don't think about, oh, this came from here, this came from there. When it rains, it pours was another one. I go look at that. That's in the 1900s, early 1900s, from the Morton Salt commercial. A lot of us have been taught that when it rains, it pours means if I have one problem, I'm going to have another problem and another problem and another problem. We may, and especially if we have that belief system, we're certainly going to be looking for more problems than we are for the simplicity of that was a declogging agent in the salt, that there's a solution to every problem. Okay? So there we grow. So your belief, your drive, and your direction give you your intention and motivation. What do I intend to do and what will I do? And that's true, but it doesn't always happen. It's not always. You're very welcome, big guy. I know, right? It's so cool to get to take that adventure to ourself and our belief systems. And that's kind of the roadmap to our internal belief system in our body. But it's also that external one, because when we talk about our drive and our direction, it's like, what do I want and what am I going to do? And do I have to re-navigate? Just because something doesn't happen the way that I want, does it mean give up? Because a lot of us were taught to, oh, well, I know for me, I used to do that. Oh, well, I guess it wasn't meant for me, right? A lot of us will say, oh, well, I guess it wasn't meant for me. That doesn't mean that. So if you had a thought, if you had a conviction, convicted in your heart, then it's something that you need to not dismiss or discard. It's something that brings value to you, and you are valuable. So to align yourself with that value. The vein throbber. Hello. It's good to see you. Thank you. The veiny throbber. Okay, so back to the notes. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you, and I hope that this is very helpful. So, yeah, our relationship with ourself, our cells, and our soul, because our cells are affected by our belief system. They really are. So, because that's our intention and motivation. Am I motivated to get up and do something? Sometimes we have to get motivated to get up and do something, even if it's just pull my yoga mat out and move my body, because moving our body will help us move our mind. How do you ensure that you're ready for marriage? Well, I would suggest talking to, a lot of people have to talk to a clergy before they get married, and I think that's a good idea, or a therapist before they get married, because your value system needs to be looked at. We talked about values last week. So if you want to dig into the values, but your values, a lot of people are attracted to each other, but then when they start, sometime down the road, they realize their values didn't align. So then they say what? They say, I'm not compatible. So last week, our topic was, are you compatible with yourself? Because unless you know what your values are, then you might not be compatible with somebody else. You may just be going along with trying to get them to approve of you. Frenchie, it's good to see you today. How are you doing? So glad you could make it. So we're talking about our belief systems being our internal map, but today we're talking about, that's what we talked about Monday. So today we're talking about who drew your map, because a lot of us aren't aware that our belief systems, like demanding respect, that's a belief system that could have been handed down. The vein throbber. When you say values, what are we speaking about exactly? Honesty, but when you get married, do you want to have children? Who's going to stay home with the children, or what's going to happen here? Values like honesty, integrity, credit cards, these things are going to come with marriage. What are you going to do? Because a lot of times when you have marriage, then you have children, then this is where a lot of marriages, I think, at least mine can go wrong, is that a lot of the things that were unhealed in our past will become reflective in our marriage. So are there values or things that you learned growing up that you say, I'm not going to do, that you're going to be totally repelled from, that you may need to heal from before you enter into marriage, because that person isn't going to heal you. So establishing what your values are rather than going by what you think and expectations of who they are, because some people are not going to turn out to who we want them to be sometimes. At least that's my experience. I hope that's helpful. You're hanging in there, Frenchie? Well, I hope today helps. Stuart, I married my high school sweetheart 7 years ago. I'm 53. That's amazing. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, Stuart. I used to have fantasies about marrying my high school sweetheart, but he died. He was only 49, so he died. It wasn't meant to be. So anyway, it has no place in the body. Okay, hold on. Okay, so our relationship with ourself, cells, and soul, and how we treat ourself. How we treat ourself, that comes from your value system, also the vein throbber. It's, how you treat yourself. Are you discarding and dismissing yourself, your thoughts and values, and just worshiping somebody else? Grinch is good. Grinch was active earlier. He's taking a nap now. When he heard me say his name, he peeked up. You know how the birds will tuck their head in their feather, in their wings? He had his head tucked in he's got his head tucked. He turned it back to his wings. He's taking a nap. Thanks, Frenchie. He was biting my feet earlier and stuff, but so, yeah, I know, right? Little ankle. He gives new meaning to ankle biter, right? So, how we treat ourselves is a part or not of our belief system. And if you don't believe that now, you will later. You will later. Hello, Ranjit. All right. So when we ignore our internal compass and quiet, thank you very much. When we ignore our internal compass and quiet it instantly with things outside of ourselves, saying that, oh, they're on my nerves, I've got to have a cigarette. Well, instead of, that's part of your belief system. Why are they getting on your nerves? Is it yours? Binod, good morning. Some of the things that got on my mom's nerves about people don't get on my nerves. But I didn't know that for a long time. I had to ask, does this really get on my nerves? Does this really get on my nerves? Some things that get on that my dad didn't like. It's like, Stacy, do you really not like that? Do you really? And I learned to create obligation as a codependent. I was codependent and I was trying to create obligations because that was a learned behavior and belief system that I had to perform. And that to perform that, you too. Yeah. So it's like learning that this isn't my belief system. And it gave me a whole lot more freedom to learn that some of these things didn't bother me, that I thought that I had to look at it though, and say, oh, and quit dismissing myself with a cigarette or a drink or, something outside of myself, shopping. I had to look at, okay, what about this is bothering me? Is it mine? Is it mine? Because sometimes it wasn't even mine. And if it was mine, where did that pain come from? And is it true today? Because kids, if kids had pain, then they just learn to adapt to the pain. They learn to create imaginative stories. What do I think of hoarders? I've worked with a few hoarders, and a lot of times what happens is they were, it comes from lack and scarcity. And a lot of people experience lack and scarcity in a lot of different ways. Not everybody hoards that has experienced lack and scarcity. Some people overshop that experience lack and scarcity. And some of them do hoard, because I've been in houses, where people, maybe worked at Williams-Sonoma, and they would get things really cheap. So they had all this stuff in their house and they wanted to give it away, but they couldn't give it away. Because it's that lack and scarcity, that fear that they're going to need it, or that fear of letting go. And it really has to be worked on for a great deal of time. I went into another person's house that they hoarded, and they had a bunch of books and magazines. And it comes from that lack and scarcity and that pain. And so we have to heal that pain for them to be able to let those things go. And that person, she wasn't allowed as a child to have books and magazines. So she had a whole walls of books and magazines. But not America has Social Security checks when retiring. Why do they need to hoard? Well, I don't know that everyone, I don't like to generalize hoarding, because not everybody who suffers from lack and scarcity is a hoarder. And I don't know that everyone on Social Security checks is hoarding, but I do know those Social Security checks aren't enough, right, y'all? So it's like those Social Security checks are not enough. Salma Naki, good evening, Salma. It's good to see you. I think hoarders are super obese and drug addicts are very similar. Well, I'm a drug addict, and the food addiction is a thing too, as far as that goes. I've been clean and sober for 29 years, but I think a lot of times because our sins don't match another person's sin, we could get judgmental over that. But I think that there a lot of people have an it, and that a lot of people are too busy looking at other people's its to discern and discover their own it. And so I think that it's sad when people are hoarding. I think it's sad when people are addicted, but I think that it's a common thing. I think that if you're not an addict, you've been with an addict. Everyone has loved an addict, I believe. And is it an addict to food? Because there's people addicted to food. I sit in meetings, and some people, have realized that sometimes people who are addicted to food then change to drugs so that they can lose the weight. And then when they changed to drugs, this was my story, when they changed to drugs, because it's that coping. A lot of people weren't taught how to cope. That's just that simple. That's simple. That was me. My parents married at 16 and 18th. Caffeine is a drug, and that's right. I drink my caffeine too. I drink my coffee, 2 cups of coffee every morning. It's like we pick our battles. A lot of us have an it. That's why I'm not putting anybody down who smokes cigarettes. I used to smoke cigarettes. I haven't smoked cigarettes in 34 years. But I understand the feeling of needing a cigarette or thinking you need a cigarette. So, yeah. And, I drank and I used drugs and I ate food because I was looking for something to make me feel comfortable outside of myself. And a lot of people didn't learn to regulate. A lot of people grew up in trauma. So really there's something underneath all of that, and it's about digging those layers. And that's what I like to do, is dig those layers, because we're all human beings. It don't matter where in the country we're sitting from, what addiction or disease or whatever. Because I agree, hoarding and it's an addiction to collecting things, right? So yeah, but there's a lot of people who are addicted who aren't willing to acknowledge the addiction. People like us are empaths. Yep, yep. Empathic and compassionate, because there for the grace of God go I. It could be anybody. There is no perfect person anywhere. And that's what's so cool about us, is we're all perfectly imperfect. We're all unspecially special. And, I'm not any more special than anybody else, and no more, we're all specially unspecial. Because there's a specialness to me. There's only one me, but that don't make me better than anybody else. There's only one you, but that don't make us better. But it makes us just fine and divine with who we are. So even though I have 29 years clean and sober, and it ain't easy. It ain't easy to live life on life's terms. But it's possible. It's possible. So, Bernard, some people identify as perfect and deny their flaws. They do. They do. Yeah. Because a lot of people transfer addictions, and a lot of people are addicted who don't even know they're addicted. A lot of food addicts may call drug addicts and think they're better than drug addicts, but they're not. It's what are we using outside of ourselves to cope with ourselves, because we're all human beings and we're all fallible. And that's the thing, is that the adventure to ourself, it helps us to discover. Thank you very much, Frenchie. I am a fighter. I am a fighter. Yeah. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So it's like, that relationship. All these years, I get to grow this relationship with myself instead of trying to be better than somebody else. I don't have to be better than somebody else. That's not my goal. My goal is to help somebody else like I was helped along the way. I believe that's what my purpose is, and our purpose, but not in a codependent way. Just because I'm empathic doesn't mean I'm codependent, because I have the art of non-attachment at the same time, because not everybody who needs help wants help. Sometimes they just want somebody to save them, and that's not helping somebody when we just save them. Facts, exactly. Exactly. So when we ignore our internal compass and quiet it instantly with things outside of ourselves, we are once again dismissing ourselves, neglecting ourselves, abusing or dismissing ourselves. So sometimes we're doing the same thing until we change that internal map. We may do the same thing that was done to us that hurt so bad, and we're trying to fight that with the same thing that created that. And talking to that person this morning, I said, this is the important thing, about the world and about these things, is a lot of people don't like things going on in the world, but they become the things they don't like in fighting, because they're on that defensive thing about, I don't like this. So they may call somebody this and may call somebody that, but even in the act of doing that, they're creating the same feeling, right? Creating the same animosity, the same feeling. And that's not healing. That's not healing. That's staying stuck. Bernard, every day is a spiritual battle, and we need to get on the right path of battle. I know it's like, what do you want? And realizing for me, that's a power greater than myself to help me fight the spiritual battles, because I'm not perfect. I'm a fallible human being. But I don't, I don't make mistakes as big as I used to. It's a progress. And it's progress, not perfection. That's what we say in our programs all the time, and addiction and all of that. progress, not perfection, because none of us are perfect. So we will be sorely let down if we think we're perfect. Hello, Anki. Love from Mexico. You live and you learn. Exactly. Exactly. And that's an adventure, isn't it, Frenchie? That's an adventure. So it is to me anyway. Learning my own, map, my own internal map and pathways, and learning to re-navigate and the mysteries. It's about the magic, mystery, and miracles in this adventure of life, and focusing on those rather than the catastrophes and the negativity. There is negativity, and some of that negativity will be directed at me, Somebody asked me, Stacy, when will I quit attracting narcissists? I'm like, you won't. You won't quit attracting narcissists. You're just going to know better about how to recognize them, because there's people who are going to be attracted to your light. There are, And so when people are attracted to your light, all people are going to be attracted to your light. And you get to discern, not judge, but discern who is for you and who, you don't feel comfortable with just yet. Thank you for those hearts. Thank you, Jay Riz. So the fact is, we probably didn't even realize the beliefs that we picked up from our life and how they have been transferred. When parents get angry at us for no reason, that transfers some unearned guilt is what that transferred. Unearned guilt. Thank you. Because we didn't know we were going to get in trouble. So as adults, we walk around on eggshells, scared we're going to get in trouble with another adult. And so healing that, realizing that you are worthy, valuable, and divine, and you were born that way. It's not about becoming somebody else for someone else so that they don't get mad. It's about being yourself, being willing to learn, because we don't want to just say, this is just the way that I am. Sometimes we need to learn. It's about being able to discern what's mine and what's not mine. That's how our internal beliefs work. So this may have been transferred. I talked about how, my mom, Monday we talked about how my mom associated money and love, that she grew up without money. So sometimes she thought that if you had money that you didn't have love, because a lot of people think that. A lot of people do think that you can't have love and money for the love of money. A lot of people think just because people have money that they don't have love, and that's not true. That's a limited belief system. So do we have a limited belief system? I shared on Monday night that there's good and bad people in all people, as far as if you want to call people good and bad, which I don't really feel comfortable calling everybody good and bad, but I do acknowledge that there is the polarities in this life, that not everybody's for us. It's not a Pollyanna world, So I don't think lottery will ruin your life. I don't think so. I'm okay with the lottery. If I win the lottery, I think I'll be all right. Actually, I won't win the lottery. My brother might, but I don't think I will. Because I'm not playing over here. But my brother might win, and if he does, I know he's going to help his sister out. Good morning, Pam. How are you doing today, darling? Did you win the lottery, big guy? Because I don't know. If you won the lottery and you got firsthand experience, let me know what I need to look for if my brother wins the lottery and helps the sister out. Hello, Peter Jones. So I talked about how my mom associated not having money to love, because her experience growing up was she had a whole lot of love but not a lot of money. And then when she got married, there was times we didn't have money and times that we did, and she still associated that, but wasn't a fact. It wasn't a fact. It wasn't a reality, because I was there growing up, and when we didn't have money, my parents fought, and when we did have money, my parents fought. Both times, both ways. So it didn't stop the fighting. The way I see it is, if you have enough money for basic needs, foods, clothes, medicines, that's enough to be grateful for. Most people don't have one of those. Right. I'm grateful every day. I haven't won the lottery. I'm not saying that being grateful for air conditioning. I was talking to my best friend this morning. It's like, I'm grateful for air conditioning right now. If we got air conditioning, man, when I get in the air conditioning, I'm so grateful when I'm outside and I go in the air conditioning. But it's having that gratefulness. And like Pam's saying, glutes are sore today, been working on lower body, so I guess it's working. It is working. And being grateful you can move that lower body. When I get up in the morning, I wake up, I try to be grateful when I wake up because I do my stretches before I get out of bed. And I'm grateful that I can move my body because someday, we may have issues moving our body. I'm not saying that we will, I'm not saying that we won't, but we might. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful for the internet so I can come to you good people. So thank you. Exactly. And I think I talk about that here in my notes. Hold on a minute and I'll get there. It is working. You're going to be fine and divine, Pam. I just love your workouts and stuff. They're inspiring. So the fact is, we probably didn't even really realize the beliefs that we picked up from life. I talked about how my mom associated. Okay, so this was because she grew up without much money. I explained that. So let's go here. In her marriage to my dad. So she repeated the same thing based on her belief system, but as a child observer of the relationships, my brothers and I related that to if you have love, money can be a problem. That's what we learned growing up, is if you have love, money can be a problem, that we're going to replace love with money. So this was something, a belief system unconsciously buried in the mind, and that wasn't true. That's not true. We live in an unlimited universe. That's coming from a limited place. So exchanging those limited, I don't want to be limited in this life. God didn't put me here to be limited in this life. And if I am limited, that's when I really need for me to pray. Now, y'all do what you want to do. But for me, that's if I'm feeling limited somewhere, that's when I really start to pray, because the only way that I'm going to get out of that is some divine intelligence for me. That's it. So I have to pray for some divine intelligence because I have a divine mind. It's just sometimes my humanness is more limited than this magnificent mind that I was born with. My arms are looking really good. I saw that. I knew that's what you had, but I wasn't trying to say anything since I didn't know if you hadn't really said it until today. But I noticed that you're looking really good, girl. Looking really good. I noticed that. I saw you the other night with your arms showing and it looked good. Yeah. I just didn't want to say anything. I knew that's what you were doing though, when you had to do all lower body workouts, having worked with, that. So, yeah. I've only been talking about it in other people's lives. Yeah. I've worked with a lot of people who have had it. It's a life changer, isn't it? So mom repeated the same thing based on her belief system, but as a child observer of the relationships, my brothers and I related it to if you have love, money can be a problem, and the lack mentality. That's another lack mentality. That's just up there with the hoarders and everybody else, that lack mentality. And it all shows up in a different variety of ways in our lives. So that wasn't what my mom said, though. That she didn't say that. That was the belief system that we carried. And so we learn to interpret these belief systems and we think that they're reality, but if we want our reality to change, then we have to change that belief system. We aren't going to demand everything outside of us change because we might have tried that and it didn't work. So when we're trying to figure out other people's minds, or they say something from their belief system that many of us don't ask if it's compatible with ours. Is it compatible with my belief system? We were taught to share our toys or to give with charity, or made to feel guilty if we didn't. So we may be navigating to that feeling of not feeling guilty, but it doesn't, of navigating that we just don't want to feel guilty is what I'm trying to say. But it doesn't take it away unless we release the belief that created it with our adult mind and maturity, or else we just end up shooting on ourselves. I should have done this, I should have done that, which is like in this spiral, in this loop that doesn't heal us. So until we question the belief systems that continue to cause pain, we may unconsciously repeat the pattern and continue to circle back around the same block of time when the belief was created with the same pain that was felt. Oh, I got a summary, I think, at the end of this, Cheese Jaded Wasted. So hang in here. Okay, hang in here. It don't take, I grew up poor. I learned how to fix things, cars, plumbing, electrical. I got a job in maintenance in my 20s and still going with it. That's amazing, Stuart. My brother did that too. He started very young in maintenance. He could figure some stuff out. That's good. My baby brother, he's been doing that a long time too. So that's a talent. So we talked about last week if you're compatible with yourself, and this week about what you think you deserve and don't deserve, what you earn or don't earn. A lot of people are running from that programming, that belief system. So I want to ask you now if you're satisfied in not allowing that to define you or for others to define you. If you're satisfied, are you waiting for others to define you as a good person? Are you waiting for others to define you as capable? Because you need to know that about yourself, that you are. Because when we people please, then that's what we're doing is we're becoming capable, but we're not doing it with the right drive, that drive in direction, intention, and motivation. We're doing it more so to prove something. As long as we're trying to prove something, we have to keep working from that, trying to prove something. When I can sit back and look at my work and be like, oh yeah, look what I did. Not somebody else approving of it. Look what I did. I didn't know I could do this. You know, that tracking about where I was, that I didn't know how to do this, that now I do, and so I am capable. I'm not looking for somebody else to tell me how capable I am. So then I can put that on my resume rather than letting it slip by me. Because I've worked with people that didn't put it on the resume and it just slipped by. I did that at one time too. I had to have a guy in maintenance, Stuart, help me with my resume because he goes, Stacy, have you ever done this when I was working on my resume? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, put that down on your resume. Have you ever done this? Yeah, put it down on your resume because I didn't recognize at that time that that was one of my gifts. That I didn't recognize that, I just didn't realize what my gifts were. And I had to acknowledge my gifts, not look for somebody else to acknowledge them. But he did help me. So I don't know about y'all, but I have an ex that actually said, when we were in court, he actually said she doesn't deserve it, and I do. The law says that I do what I was asking for. But he said she doesn't deserve it because I hurt him. So he thought I didn't deserve it. He hurt me too, but he wasn't gonna, that wasn't. I also deliver margarita machines as a side hustle. It pays good. I bet it does. It would really pay good down here. But that doesn't mean that I didn't deserve it. A court of law says I deserve it, but I didn't, it didn't work out. But anyway, I didn't take that on just because he said that. Did it piss me off? It did, because I knew I did. But it didn't rule my life, but I didn't need to prove that I do deserve it. I just let it go finally. I just let it go. In fact, I'm praying that I will be successful so I don't have to receive what it is that I deserve. I hope that I can just let that go because there's something that, someday will come up and I do deserve it. And so, I don't even want to mess with it because I don't want the energy of somebody having their claws into something that, that I don't want the energy coming to me, right? So I think that I'll be okay. So I believe he holds his power in his money. Some people do that, and that has power over him, and he and it have no power over me. So I've walked away once with not much, and as a struggling single mom, and as my kids and I struggled because of my old belief that he had power. See, the first time I divorced him, I believed that he had the power. But the second time I divorced him, I tried to get what I deserved, but I didn't. Not that time. But it's like, okay, well, if they get it was in Mexico, so that, yeah. Same man, big guy. What happened was that I thought I thought he changed because I had worked on my codependency, because when we first split the first time, I had codependency. I didn't know what his part in it was though, because I had gotten sober when I was married to him the first time. And so I really didn't know myself for a long time because I didn't know myself as a sober person. I didn't. I had to learn myself as a sober person. And so I was really unhappy without my coping skills. And the coping part of that coping skills was codependency. So when I got divorced, that's when my therapist told me, Stacy, go to CODA. So I worked on my codependency when we were divorced for 10 years. But then we lost our son, and nobody understood the pain of losing my son like my ex-husband did. So then we trauma bonded back together because I saw how well he treated our daughter, and I thought that he would treat me nice too, because he kept wanting me back all this time. But it was more about capturing me than keeping me. You know what I mean? For me. I'm sure his experience is different. But for me, it was more about capturing me for him. And then once he had me, it wasn't the same because his feelings, he had healing to do too. He had his own experience with his mom that influenced his relationship with me. Like I had experience with my dad that explained it, that when neither one of us are bad people. He's not a bad person. I'm not a bad person. We're not compatible. And I kept telling him we're not compatible when we were divorced before we lost our son. I know. And so the pain of losing our son actually brought us together instead of apart because I had to heal. Because I thought I would blame him when I lost my son. I thought I would do this stuff, but I couldn't blame him because 3 fingers would be pointing back at me. So I had to heal. And I thought forgiveness looked like seeing him differently. And I did see him differently. But he didn't change, you see. That was the thing, is I thought that he would. I thought a catastrophe like our son, that happened and he would be different, that he was different. I believed it. But you know what? I didn't pay attention to myself and my gut, that gut feeling. Thank you, Stuart. Codependency is so I learned codependency growing up. A lot of people, a lot of women, I think, in the South did learn codependency, that you just take care of everything, right? You just take care of everything, that's your job. And so a lot of, the things that happen got projected on. If things are happening, then you feel like it's your fault. And so codependence, and that's how they navigate, is they're trying not to have things be their fault. They're trying to feel good about themselves. And so codependency was a learned behavior for me, but it was also a part of my addiction, because codependency is the feeling of, the things that I learned in codependency were that not everything's about me, because a codependent fears that if person's behaving the way they behave because of them. So not everything's about me. I don't have to fix everything, because a codependent feels like they have to fix everything to be worthy and valuable. I also had to learn there's my business, God's business, and somebody else's business. So as an empath, I had to learn that I didn't need to get in other people's business and try to fix them when my own world was falling apart. And then thirdly, about expectations, because a lot of people, I had expectations of me, and I had expectations too. And we talked about expectations earlier here, is that expectations can be some of those old tapes, but a lot of times when we're looking at the golden rule and all of this, we expect somebody to treat us how we behave, but that's not necessarily so. So when we can heal things that are on our soul, we can be navigated, because not everybody is going to treat you the way that you treat them. And you have to have the wisdom to know the difference. Does that person even have the capacity? Because that's where a lot of my pain came from, was that I kept choosing people who didn't have the capacity to love me. But then I had to look at myself, and it's like, oh, you need to have the capacity to love yourself, because a codependent loves other people too much and not even themselves. Imagine if you're homeless and starving for food, do they go to therapy? I don't know if they have any therapy in the homeless shelters. Stuart, getting back with your ex is like reading a book and expecting a different ending. I know you know too. So you know. It didn't work. I had hoped that it would, but it didn't. I just wrote a poem about my son. His birthday would have been July 17th, and I wrote a poem, This Is Not What I Planned. And that was the same thing with my second divorce. I didn't plan my first divorce, and I didn't plan my second divorce. So sometimes things happen that we didn't plan. And I didn't plan to get divorced a second time, but I've learned my lesson not to go back a second time, right? Did you learn that too? I think you did, because you've been with yours for your current for 7 years now. I'm so glad you got that experience. We got to be so humble. We do need to be humble in our life. Samir, I just drank 3/4 of vodka. I ain't gonna dare you to drive. We're not even talking about that here. You need to not drive and go to sleep. Stacy, you can always find love. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But first off, it's finding it within ourselves, that self love. And that exploration for codependency helped me to learn to love myself, instead of looking outside of myself for everyone else to give me that. Because that's what I did in codependency. I'm not proud of it, but that's why I share it, is because there may be somebody else out there that looks for love outside of themselves. And we can find it inside of ourselves. I had to learn that it was inside of me. All right. I'm glad you're not going to drive. Go sleep. So, where am I at in these notes? So when I bring up the ex-husband, I'm talking about him because he was nice at first, and he's still nice. I told my kids, I used to tell my kids, and I learned it with my parents, people who are not good lookers may not find love. Well, I don't know about all that. I think there's somebody for everyone, and what means somebody's a good looker, is we all have our personal preferences, so I don't know about that. It depends. I don't know if you mean physical good lookers or good lookers as far as being able to internally look within to what do I want. A lot of people try to fit themselves into the mold of somebody else when they're looking at. Hello, Samir. What is my preference? I don't know what you mean. I have great girlfriends, but I love men. But I don't have a relationship with anybody right now except for myself. And that's because I've got plans, and I'm not trying to get attached to anything here in this part where I'm at right now, because I'm moving. Thank you, Pam. I love you. So I have healed from what the ex said about me, and that doesn't even have power. So I'm only bringing it up because when we talk about how some people are not nice, well, some of them were at one time, and maybe we moved too fast when we were talking about compatibility earlier. Maybe we moved too fast or not, but we are not compatible, and but we are not compatible, and one's belief system of what I earn and deserve does not matter. See? So learning what we're compatible with now will save us if we, later, so we're not saying your friends in the, I know everyone has a different experience with love. They do. And we all aren't going to be attracted to the same thing. Yes, big guy, I'm still going to Europe. I've had to change my plans of where I'm going to Europe. And that's what I mean by sometimes we just have to re-navigate. It doesn't mean that I'm going to give up, because I see myself doing things in Europe in 10 years. So I was talking to one person this morning too, and when we were talking about tracking, I was like, 10 years ago, I was getting ready to move to Mexico. 10 years from now, I'm going to be in Europe and, on these adventures and things that I keep talking about. So it's just not giving up. Just because I can't go to Spain, because my bird, Grinch, can't go to Spain, y'all, because they said that because Grinch is a Quaker parrot, and while Quakers are a protected species, they're also a nuisance as far as when they're wild. And they're not even going to take the time to go through the paperwork to see that my Grinch isn't a wild parrot, not outside the house anyway. He might be inside the house. Rayer, I am going to France. I'm looking at Nimes, France, Rayer. My wife and I are planning a trip from Texas to Louisiana. Her mother passed. It's a rough time for her, and I'm nervous about the trip. I'm so sorry about her mom. That's a hard thing. I'm so fortunate I still have my mom. I am, and I can't imagine her pain. I'll be sending, prayers and good vibes, yours and her way, because, yeah. Are you nervous about her emotions with the trip, Stuart? Sometimes the best thing to say is nothing. I know that it's hard when people lose somebody they love so much, and, losing my son, I knew that there was nothing anybody could say to fix that. They would bring me a cup of coffee, make sure that I had what I needed, and that was the biggest help in my grief was just people not trying to make it better, because you can't make it better. You can't. You don't have to make it worse, but you can't make it better. And sometimes when people are trying to make it better, while they have good intentions, it makes it worse. When they compare, her loss to her mom is a different relationship than anybody else's loss to their mom. It's a different law, so compare. A lot of people, though, in trying to relate, they'll say, I lost this and I lost that. And it's like, that's just annoying, because when we are grieving, that stuff is raw. And I understand you're nervous and you probably want to know how to comfort her. And I'm just saying, probably just holding her, making sure she has what she needs. There's not going to be a perfect thing to say, because there's just not one, Pam, France and US also on my wish list with Spain and Italy. See, that's the cool thing. When I'm looking at in France, I looked at it. It's a 9-hour drive to my friend in Spain. And it's close. It's right and centrally located in between Italy and Spain. So I'm going to have the best of both worlds. And Nimes is a old Roman town. So it used to be Roman. So it's close. It's close. It's going to be good. Europe got forest fire. Yeah, a lot. Canada did too. And I think there's some places now in the United States then to go west instead. Did you say Reims? Nimes, not Reims. Nimes. It's an N, and then the I is really cool looking. So it's, since it's French, it's N, and then it's got an I, but then the I has this thing that's like an arrowhead looking thing on the top of it, and then it's MES. Rare. Me, myself, and I thinking about going to Chicago. All right, Chicago's a happening place. Samir, I love everyone, including you. Well, thank you, Samir. Me too. Stuart, thank you so much, Stuart. I'll be thinking about y'all. That's a lot. Pam, that was so good when we can figure out how to try to help others. It's so hard. So many people do that with comparison. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Pam, because, I know for me, there would be people come up to me and say, I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't think I could go on. And I'm thinking, I know he's intending well, but there's not really much of a choice, because I still have my daughter, and you have to go on, and then, but I know he was well-meaning. And again, this goes back to that belief system. He was probably just repeating something that he heard, and so, but it didn't help. It didn't help. And then people telling me, well, I know when I lost such and such, it's like, I did not care. I was in my grief. So, yeah. She's jaded, wasted. When we did Euro trip from UK, we did go to Reims. It's a lovely little town, great bakeries. Ooh, I'll have to check that out. Thank you. I haven't been to France yet at all. So isn't it funny that I'm just deciding, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You're very welcome, big guy. Thank you for being here this morning. I appreciate you. It's so good to see you. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. Remember, you're a winner. Logan. Wow, Angel has come to use YouTube Live. Thank you. Thank you, Logan. So, let's see where I am in my notes, because we're about to get to the summary for G's Jaded Wasteds, and then we'll get to the breathing. So, I don't need to bring that up. Many do. Okay, I think it's important to not become what we don't want. I just talked about earlier about how when people are trying to fight for justice sometimes, with all the division going on in many places right now, not just in America, we have to be careful not to become what we don't want, because I've seen it on both sides in America, to where, they'll be making fun of somebody. I don't believe that either side needs to be making fun of somebody. I believe we need to stick with the facts. And even the facts can be construed. But to make fun of people, it depends. If they're a comedian, well, then that's what they do for a living. But to be grossly, negligent in how we can become what we don't want. We can talk about a person being this way, but if we do the same thing it doesn't mean our sins are any better, and I'm not talking about sins as in the biblical way. I'm talking about missing the mark, that it doesn't make us a better person to do the same thing in our idea of justice. I always come here and make you blush. Oh, well, thank you, Logan. Thank you. That means you're flattering me, huh? So, gratitude. We talked about gratitude earlier and the need. Binod talked about gratitude and the need for, I think it was Binod, right? Binod, are you still here? Gratitude is a place on my map, and it is daily gratitude. It's a spot that I have, it's the spot that I have arrived at, and I'm okay. I have what I need, and I know that I'm driving, and I have goals, but I also have what I need today and have evidence of where I've been on my past map, and that I have come a long way from the towns of my old belief systems. Knowing myself is really important. Hurt people will hurt people. Will you get in their car out of fear or find your own safety, right? So your own safety belt in your own car with your map. And what are you afraid of? Acknowledge that. It may have to be peeled away in layers. Mine has and does. Thank God I'm alive and have experiences, and that you're here and have experiences too, because I get to learn from y'all also. So I hope that you get on the avenue of gratitude, and I'm grateful to all of you that are here. Y'all know that I know you could be somewhere else, being a different algorithm that's not going to have anything to do with you, that's going to be mindless, thing. And I'm not against that either, because sometimes I mindlessly look at things. But then I have to get back in my own mind and say, Stacy, how is this serving you? Do you want to have dreams about this stuff that you're looking at here? So I hope that if you have dreams about this stuff you're looking on here, that they're good dreams and that they help empower you and keep you in your own driver's seat. So, I acknowledge, what are you afraid of? Acknowledge that. It may have to be peeled away in layers. Mine has and does, but thank God I'm alive and have experiences, and you do too. I hope that you get on the avenue of gratitude, right? I am grateful to all of you. So was there something special, or something that was repeated over as a child that you heard, or you had a refelt feeling? And do you still hear it and feel it today? These are things to think about as you reflect upon if you get angry or get upset about something. Is this a refelt feeling? Is it your belief system? How is your family, church, culture, trauma beliefs? Is it yours or theirs? I've had to ask myself these questions, and many of my fears were my mother's and father's. And when I talked to myself about them and the therapist or coach, I realized I wasn't afraid. If you check in with yourself, you may realize your own autonomy and being divinely guided by your own personal reality. Sometimes we develop our beliefs and realities by others, and this leaves us identifying our images and values based on that outside of ourselves. So what are your fears? Are they abandonment, neglect, abuse, confusion, betrayal, and etc.? You can heal those fears and choose different avenues physically and in your neural pathways in your body, those chemicals that you release. Hello, KB Swart. So, in the summary, who drew your map? This reflection explores the deep-seated origins of our personal belief systems and the importance of questioning the maps that we use to navigate life. We highlight that many of our core beliefs rooted in family dynamics, religion, culture, and trauma are adopted during our first 12 years of life. And as adults, we do not examine these inherited maps. We risk living out other people's agendas, trying to navigate the detours of their minds and remain entrapped in cycles of pain, guilt, and resentment. So, the central theme here is the distinction between the ego, which provides our drive, often fueled by survival instincts, fear, or a need to prove ourselves to those who hurt us, and the soul, which provides our true direction. So what was shared here was personal experiences of healing from a toxic divorce and observed inherited beliefs about money and love, illustrating how true freedom comes from refusing to let others dictate one's worth. By actively questioning our fears, avoiding the poison of resentment, and rewiring our neural pathways, we can reclaim our autonomy. And ultimately, the peace champions reaching the destination of gratitude, a place of self-trust, safety, and divine alignment, driven by our own conscious reality rather than the protective, unhealed beliefs of the past. So, it was suggested on Sunday to include a story that you all could relate to. So I have a little story here for you. You ready for the story? Hello, Muhammad. Are y'all ready for a story? Let's take a deep breath in, and then it's just a short story, and then we'll finish the rest of the breathing to regulate and regenerate our central nervous system. So let's take a deep breath in for the story. And release. All right, here we go, Muhammad. Who else is still here? I'm going to read the story. So, for years, Maya's mind was a superhighway built by ghosts. She drove down it every day, her foot heavy on the gas pedal. All right, thanks, Pam. The engine of her mind roared with frantic, exhausting drive of her ego. Her internal GPS barked orders and voices that weren't hers. Turn left to avoid abandonment. Speed up to prove you're worthy. Watch out, they're going to take what's yours. These were deep-rutted roads of her neural pathways carved by childhood fears, a culture of scarcity, and the sharp betrayals of her past. Because the ruts were so deep, it was effortless for the tires of her thoughts to slide into them. This was the ego at work, a survival mechanism. And that mechanism kept her moving at blinding speeds, terrified that if she stopped, she would be vulnerable. So the ego gave her immense drive, but it provided no true destination, only a desperate loop around the same neighborhood of pain. One Tuesday, amidst the torrential downpour of anxiety and the familiar, suffocating urge to justify her existence to people who didn't care, Maya finally pulled over. She turned off the engine, and in the sudden, shocking quiet in the driver's seat, she looked at the map glowing on her dashboard. It was covered in waypoints she had never chosen. Her mother's financial anxieties, her ex-partner's cruel intentions of what she deserved, the protective armor she had worn since she was 12 years old. Whose map is this? She asked herself. She reached down to shut down the GPS, and the screen went black. In the silence, Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath, an anchoring breath. And beneath the loud, demanding thrum of her ego, she felt a quieter, steadier hum. It was the compass of her soul. And while the ego screamed out of fear, the soul whispered out of love. The soul didn't care about proving the ex wrong or winning an argument or outrunning abandonment. The soul only cared about direction. That's good, G's Jaded Wasted. That is good. You know to turn that GPS off, that sound off. So she sat there with that dark black screen and said, where to? Where to? And the soul seemed to ask, a gentle tug pulling down toward her downward to the divine center, her soul tugging at her. And Maya pictured her brain, imagining those deep, muddy trenches of her old trauma responses. Consciously and deliberately, she chose a new thought. I have what I need today. I'm safe in my own car. It was difficult at first. Creating a neural pathway felt like hijacking and hacking a walking trail, like hacking a walking trail through the dense, overgrown jungle. Her brain wanted to slide back into the familiar ditch of panic and resentment, but Maya held the wheel steady. With every breath of gratitude, with every refusal to drink the poison of anger, she laid down a new stone on a fresh path. She turned the key in the ignition. The car purred in life, but this time The frantic drive was gone. She put the car in the gear, navigating entirely by the quiet internal direction of her soul. And as she drove forward, the rain cleared. In the rearview mirror, she watched the old, heavy highways crumble, the overgrown vines of her past drying up as they were starved off, of her attention. Ahead of her, the road was unpaved but bright, bathed in the warm golden light of gratitude. She was the one drawing the map now, and for the first time in her life, she knew exactly where she was going. So I love that you were able to turn that voice of that GPS off. Geez, Jaded, Wasted, and Grinch even wanted to come out and say hello. Are y'all ready to breathe, darlings, and get back to whatever you need to do for today? I want to thank y'all again so much for being here this morning. I appreciate you, whether you're still here or you were here or whenever you're here. If you rewatch this, I appreciate it. And I thank you all. If you haven't subbed, if you'll consider subbing. If you need coaching, then my email is in the description. That you might hear the gas truck coming. That's what's coming, making all that noise. You are very welcome, darling. You are very welcome. I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday. Grinch, really? Have a wonderful Wednesday. Let's breathe. 5 of them if you're new here. Okay, so here we grow. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. And release. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Just 2 more. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Last one. Breathe. Hold it. And release. Oh, I don't have any recent outside walk, Pam, if you're still here, but I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night, because tomorrow night is our Thursday night, group coaching session on Zoom. So if you deep breathing also helps me with opening my, yes, it does. Thanks, Pam. Yes, it does. That's so important. And I'll see you tomorrow night if you're able for our group coaching session on Zoom. And I'll send out something in the morning to remind y'all, or maybe today I'll send it out. That's what I'm going to do, is work on creating our dialogue for tomorrow night about what we're going to talk about tomorrow night. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night if you can join. Okay? All right, and if anyone sees this later and if they want to join that group coaching, then that's, if you subscribe to my Facebook page, Stacy Renee, if you're on Facebook, if you subscribe to that page, then I do group coaching 2 Thursdays. It's at 4 p.m. EST. No, it's at 7 p.m. CST. So that's going to be 8 EST. So yeah, it's Thursday night, bi-weekly, every other week, twice a month. And it's going to be at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, which is 8 Eastern Standard. And yeah. So I look forward to seeing y'all then. Yes, it's going to be 5 PST. Exactly. So I look forward to seeing y'all then. I always love this, getting to connect with you all. So I hope that you're going to have a good evening tonight, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Tomorrow. And like I said, if y'all want to subscribe to my channel on Facebook, that's how you get in this group coaching session that we do bi-weekly on Thursdays. All right. Thanks so much. Y'all have a wonderful Wednesday, and I appreciate you. Love you. Grinch does too. All right. Bye.